believe how fast time has flown. Seems like it was just a couple weeks ago we were trying to end school. Now we're trying to start it all over again. You brought back a lot of memories, Dr. Lynchburg. I do remember those afternoons and late evenings that we spent in my living room mostly. Didn't know then you didn't appreciate our popcorn. Just shows to go you. But there were some inspiring activities. I really enjoyed that. I enjoyed my role as a member of the board. And when I became superintendent, it was kind of a strange feeling. I kind of fluttered around. I wasn't sure whether I was a board member or the superintendent or what. You know, I didn't know if these guys were my colleagues or my bosses. I didn't know exactly how to deal with that. So then about 3 months later, I marched into an executive session and put my personnel agenda on the table, and several of them tried to assist me with it. I knew then that I was a superintendent and they were the board. And I told them, I said, you guys don't look quite as good from this angle. But we've been fortunate in this town to have had the quality of leadership on our board that we've had. Now, I know that sounds like a kind of a reckless statement, but do you read the Dallas Morning News? If you do, you know the validity of that statement. You know, when you get into any kind of contest, and we were in one on the 28th of May, you don't need to get into that contest unless you're ready to deal with the issues. And we took quite a trashing coming out of that contest that developed a fog around the whole school system. And many people's vision is so weak they can't penetrate through that fog and see the realities. But from my perspective, I can see clearly the realities. And let me tell you a reality. The improvement in student achievement in this district is phenomenal. And for that, I applaud all of you. Our district superintendents, our principals and their administrators, the teachers, the students, the parents. There's a lot to be proud of about this school district. The board. And I think you need to continually to remind yourself about that. Don't allow yourself to be defined by other people who don't know. Have a self-esteem and an ego that's too strong for that. You can't allow that to happen. This district has made phenomenal progress in almost every parameter you can think about. And every time I can find a crowd of more than two, I'm going to articulate that. So let me thank all of the people who helped make that come true. And we're beginning to see some realities in the board's beliefs and vision. It's not just a dream. It's beginning to convert itself into things you can touch, feel, see. And it's accomplishing that through the leadership of our direct reports, our district superintendents and so forth. Let me tell you now about the two ladies in my life that helps with this a lot. One is sitting right here, Faye Bryant. Thank you, Faye. She tried to retire, but she ran up against me, trying to retire. And Susan, stand up, Susan. Thank you, Susan. Now, there are a lot of others, but I just wanted to point that out, because I don't think that anybody can appreciate the effort and the caring and the things that they do on behalf of the children in the Houston Independent School District. A lot of work, a lot of work. Now, I'm under the most strict direction that I've ever had since I've become superintendent in terms of coming up to the mic and making a talk. Usually I come up on my own volition and lay it out like I see it, but I've had some rather strong guidance here, and I'm going to struggle to deal with that. I agree with the guidance too, by the way. We're to talk about a vision. You know, we're at a point now where you gotta have a vision. You gotta see it. You gotta see it so vividly that it's real. You gotta see it out in front of you. And it's gotta be a place that's heavenly. Otherwise, why would you want to go there? It's gotta be better than the place you left. And so then it's our job to help everybody bridge that gap by creating the reality that this new place is a heavenly, better place than the place we're in. The best articulation of a vision that I can ever remember is the Martin Luther King speech in Washington, where he laid out in real terms this heavenly place that all of us would like to be in. Now, none of us can match that. It probably will never be matched. But we too need to know what the place looks like that we're trying to go to. And I've jotted down some words that roughly remind me of that. And it's kind of a vision, because if somebody would ask me what the Houston Independent School District looks like years in front of us and ask me to describe it, if I see it in front of me, what I see in front of me, this reality, it would be a district that was efficiently run, that was student-focused, one where students were provided an optimal opportunity for a world-class education. It would be a place where student performance is high, where educators accept the responsibility for student learning, where administrators and support service personnel know that their purpose, the fact they exist to support the relationship between the teacher and the student, not to direct things. Where accountability exists at all levels, and where there is respect for each other across all of the levels of organization. That's the way the district would look if I would describe it. If I see this district in the future with the 4 initials on it, HISD. That's our school district. That's your school district. That's my school district. That's the school district of the children that we teach, the teachers. You can't separate yourself from this district. All of our well-being is entwined. It's entangled. It's together. Paul's not to mention people who said to me, Dr. Minsberg, on any number of occasions, if you don't do this, we're not going to support the bond issue. If you don't do this, you don't do that. That's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. That's what created some of the problems we got now, that kind of attitude. You cannot erode public support for a system and then expect that system to be gracious to you. Doesn't work that way. Now, they indicated that I am supposed to talk about my personal view, and this I'll do. And it reminds me that I must talk about my own philosophy about how this situation lines up in terms of structure. For me, it's rather clear. It's maybe an infantile way to look at it, but to me it's simple, clear. On this side, there are schools. And this side should be operated like schools. We should have people over here who are trained to deal with schools. We should have people here who are certified to do these things that schools do. These are schools. The people over here are expert in those things that have to do with schools. Over on this side, these are not schools. These are support services. These are, in fact, businesses. The bus system only has to do with schools and it gets children to schools, but it needs to be operated like a bus system. The human resources operation isn't a school. It shouldn't be operated by school principals or school's processes. It should operate like a human resources operation. And its job is to get the personnel that schools need, that they decide upon, that they choose. It's a clearinghouse. And it's operated by experts in human resources. And the same thing about legal and finance and those other issues. And they are important to the extent that they support the real deal, which is schools over here. Now, when we get these things mixed up, it causes some havoc that I think exists in all large systems in the United States. If the Houston Independent School District were a company, it would be 300 and something on the Fortune 500. It is not a mom and pop operation. And it has to be operated efficiently. Aside from that, I'll briefly articulate some principles that guide me in the decisions that we make and the things that we do and it underpins our conduct. There are so many of them, I'll go real fast, and maybe not, I won't finish all of them. For me, the heart of the education process is in the interaction between the teacher and the student. That doesn't happen, nothing else matters. Everything else is there only to support that relationship. That interaction between the teacher and the student is the bottom line. School is when the teacher closes the door and looks in the eye of those 22 students. That's when school starts. And those people who are looking in the eye of those students and in that environment are the ones that should be involved in the decisions about what happens there. I believe there's no other purpose for a teacher but to cause learning on the part of the student. There is no other purpose. The sum total of that purpose is in the growth of the child. And it's the individual school, not the district, that must be the true unit of improvement, the individual school. Every school is unique and has to have unique attention. And we too often talk about the district, but it's really each individual school. And each individual school has to make decisions and operate based on the needs of the people in that individual school, including the professionals that run the school and the children who attend. I believe the real focus should be on the child, not on the rules. The key relationship is the one between the teacher and the child, not the teacher and the central administration, not the school administration and the central administration. The key is what happens with the child. And from the point of view of teaching, and many people have told me that this is too simple to be true, but I nonetheless remain there. There are only three things that we need to do to improve instructions. You got to improve the quality of instruction. That's one way. We can improve the quantity of instruction, have more of it. Or we can increase the student's motivation for receiving instruction. So that's not complicated. To make sure that we got good, sound instruction. And then to make sure we got enough of that, we can increase it. This leads me to make a comment about our reading program. We struggle with finding the answer on what is a sound way to deal with this. We brought in all of the experts we could bring in. We had them study for 6 months or 3 months. They reviewed all the literature. And now they've come back to us with their best shot. And it's the Houston Independent School District balanced approach to teaching reading. Now the argument is settled. The answer is in. What we're going to do is clear. We are going to adopt and use the balanced approach for teaching reading. And, by the way, everybody in the nation is looking at us. We're getting calls from districts as far away as California. There was an article in the Wall Street Journal some weeks ago about it. We must succeed at this. We believe that somewhere in this reading issue lies the answer to a lot of our problems, including our large number of special ed kids. We've got to solve this reading problem so that every kid by age 3, grade 3, is on level and remains there thereafter. Margaret, I've got to applaud you for what you've done with that reading program. Stand up, Margaret, so we can all give you a hand. Are there any other members of that reading committee, peer committee? Thaddeus? Thaddeus was on it. Who else was on it? Ricky? Where's Ricky? Okay. Margaret Strauss, stand up. Let's have the committee stand up. Right. You've done a great job, and you've got us where I like for us to be, and that's the point where everybody's watching to see what they can learn from us. Okay. All schools, I believe that all schools are capable of meeting the same high standards. We've had some chance to debate with the state people about this. And there is another philosophy out there that says we should compare every school with other schools that's like that school. And so that if you are a school with a lot of children in it that fit this definition that we call at risk, you should only be compared with other schools that have that same kind of demographic characteristics. That's hogwash. That's setting the bar too low. That's insulting. Besides, we got evidence to prove that that's not right. We've got schools in this district that have all the characteristics of at risk and not being able to succeed, but they succeed. We can't tell the difference, looking at our elementary schools in particular, about the makeup of the children in that school if we use this philosophy. If we use this philosophy, we should write off MacArthur Elementary. Why did MacArthur Elementary achieve like this? Because of the leadership there and because of the commitment of the teachers there and the students. MacArthur Elementary is an exemplary school on the HISD accountability list. Now there are others, and I know I'm gonna get in trouble by not mentioning all of them, but I just had to bring that one out because it makes the point so vividly for me. The employees of the organization are the organization's greatest asset. You would be surprised, I'm surprised, at some of the qualitative suggestions you get from people You can't just write off people. Many times they can bring you information and ideas that you could never get anywhere else. All of our employees are important to this operation. They are our greatest asset. And so therefore, when we are dealing with our management efficiencies, which is going to cause a lot of changes and cause some employees to move from place A to place B, we're going to always keep in mind that they are our greatest asset and we're going to protect them. So our employees are our greatest asset. There are others, but I'll stop now and shift to another subject that's, I think, important for me to mention. There are three things that I've set for myself as goals for this year. One is improve student achievement. Although we are improving student achievement, if better is possible, good won't do. So then that means that next year we expect improvement on the great improvement that we had this year. Now last year I asked that we have no low-performing schools, and we had 11. Now we got to fix those 11 because next year we seriously want no low-performing schools. Every school in the Houston Independent School District can move into the acceptable category. No low-performing schools. And for district superintendents and principals, pay special attention to those schools that need help. Just like I said last year, whatever help is needed, I'll help provide that help. For those schools that are marginal and might slip back down into that category, pay some attention to them. No low-performing schools next year. Student achievement is our purpose. The second goal is improve management efficiency. That means we've got to be prudent with the taxpayer's purse. We've got to operate and spend dollars efficiently. We cannot have a wasteful operation. First experience I had about this is when we got ready to do the district superintendent's office. I think it was your office, Dr. Faselka. We had the plans drawn up and we asked our people, Johnny, I know Johnny's covered his head, but I know you straighten this out, to give us a cost on what it would take to build out that space, and they came back with a cost of about $90,000, I think it was, or something like that. We took it into the private sector and asked some contractors to price out the same thing, and it was about $60,000. It's a $30,000, $25,000, $30,000 gap. And obviously, we can't put up with that. Of course, that was a long time ago. Johnny straightened it out. We can't do that. We can't do things like that. We took our workers' compensation and we outsourced it to the private sector. We were doing it poorly. Last year, I had to budget, what is it, Leonard, $12 million in workers' compensation? $13.5 million in workers' compensation. This year, we budgeted how much?
About $2 million less.
About $2 million less, a little better than $11 million. In other words, we were spending $2 million more to do that than we should. All kinds of ailments were showing up in workers' compensation. There was one person out on workers' compensation for pregnancy. Now, if that's a work-related situation, we got some other problems too. So issues like that we got to fix, and we can fix them. Here's an example of the fact that we can fix them. 3 years ago, we had a real problem with our alternative certification program. A serious problem. I couldn't believe it. Because every time we would look at the problem, we saw it at one level, it ran deeper. And so finally we had to go down to the bottom of it, and we fixed it. And guess what? In our principal survey among you, in our principal survey now, the part of central administration that you appreciated most, the feedback we got, Dr. Mitzberg, of the organization they thought most efficient was our alternative certification program. Third and final one is to improve public support for public schools. 1996 in the United States of America, and as we look into the future, we've got to notice that public support for public schools is not the same as it was in 1960. Now, there are a lot of reasons for that I won't bother about articulating. But public support for public schools is really a critical issue that we've got to pay attention to. That means that we're not just whistling Dixie when we say we want you to have a parental involvement program. We want that for student achievement, of course, but we also want that for our support of the community such that we get support for the schools in return. This is very important. I'm going to ask every single school to have a mechanism in that school, a committee, that has as its purpose developing, enhancing, and growing parental support, or parental involvement in schools. I've included $1 million in our budget to support this activity. So I'm putting our money where my mouth is. We're serious about parental support. Now we'll have to do it differently than we've done it before. A large number of our children come from families that are headed by grandparents. A large number of our children come from families who have not heretofore been active in the civic life of their communities. A large number of our parents may speak Spanish as a first language and feel uncomfortable in communicating. We've got to overcome all of that, because the children that we serve need the support of the community that we serve. And the principals, the district superintendents, are the key leaders in this regard. I'm going to have some conferences with our district superintendents where we're going to talk about this as a subject. Thelma Gazier was just named district superintendent for the East, and I told Thelma that she still has to undergo a professional in-service development program that I teach. And she thought I was kidding. But I told her, ask Larry and Joe. I had to spend extra time with Larry and Joe. Had to get up early Saturdays and come over to the Paige Institute to start teaching about this, on what we want out there. And a big part of that has to do with improved support for public schools. I'll end this part of it and do the final part by making this analogy that I read in a book called Is There a Public for Public Schools? It is published by the Kettering Foundation, and its author is Dr. Matthews. This book asks that very important question. About out of time. And the answer obviously is not enough of a public. And he analogizes the school system as being a bridge, like the Golden Gate Bridge. And the public support like being the pillars under the bridge that prop the bridge up. And you keep running across this bridge and you never see down underneath about the condition of these pillars. And we pay no attention to that, we just keep running across the bridge with heavy loads. All of a sudden one day we ran an 18-wheeler across this bridge and then ended up in the water. Because the support underneath needed attention and had not received it. And when we ran that 18-wheeler across that bridge called a bond issue, and it ended up in the water, it not only got the truck in the water, but it also further weakened the support for the bridge. You got that? Now you need to go across that bridge with what, a bicycle? Or something like that. That leads me into this year's budget. Did you notice I went tippy-toeing across the bridge? I'm a fast learner. Now, fortunately, we have significant reserves. That's due primarily to Leonard and Bob Moore. Leonard, let's give you and Bob Moore a big hand. Money didn't grow on trees. And Skip, the money didn't grow on trees. It came because of their aggressive attitude on challenging our tax assessments in Austin and in suing the comptroller. I hope he doesn't remember that as he comes in with this review. So what we've done is we've generated significant reserves, and we're living off those reserves this year. Unfortunately, they're not sufficient to do all the things we'd like to do. But if we didn't have to use these reserves for making these repairs that we've got to make to our buildings, we could use these reserves for other purposes. One that would touch you and I in a way that we could deeply appreciate. But given the circumstances that we have articulated our needs for building renovations, we're not talking about expansion, we're talking about renovations. We got places out there where children are unsafe. We've got fire code violations. We've got building codes violations. We've got air conditioning systems that don't work well. Those things will have to be attended to. So as a first priority, I'm allocating dollars to do that. Now, do you understand how the bonding system works? By asking the public to pass bonds, what you were really saying is allow us to borrow money. We were trying to borrow $390 million to build buildings and do renovations with. Now, the reason that's important to do is that if you borrow the money to build the buildings, and if the buildings have a life of 30 or 35 or 40 years, then future users of the buildings will share in paying for the buildings because the loan extends 30 years and they'll be paying for it all throughout that 30-year period. That's the importance of the bonding process. The other way is you use money that you generate at that period of time, that shifts the burden of paying for it on the current taxpayers. And that is not a fair burden. But since this other solution is denied us, then we have to use the only solution that we have access to. Because there's one place where there's no degrees of freedom, and that is we have to put children in safe environments. And so that's why the situation in the budget is as it is. And I hope that we will understand that and support it. I think I've used up about as much time as I can keep your attention. So let me just end by saying this. When I go to shop at Fiestas or Kroger's, a place like that, people, without missing a single time, follow me around the aisle as I push my shopping cart. And I get a lot of conversation. There are certain themes that this conversation evolves around. One such theme is, boy, you must have a tough job. I know you really, it's hard. You got the worst job, and you got the worst job, and it's really bad. I know you're under all this pressure, all this stress, I mean, if I could just close my ears to that, because let me tell you something. I don't experience all that stress. I don't experience all that pressure. I understand its importance. I understand there are other people who got different points of views. I understand that the decibel levels of some of those persons' voices is high. But that is not going to jerk me off the focus. You see? I know something they don't know. I know I got some of the best people anywhere with us. I know I got my key direct reports, for which I applaud. I know I got the board. And most of all, we got all you who feel pretty much the same way I do. Instead of being pigeonholed with the burdens that you have, you are clear about the responsibility that you have, and that is every day that you wake up, you're going somewhere important. You're going to a school, and at that place, determinations are going to be made. Those determinations have the power of converting the world into the kind of place all of us want it to be. So then, you got a chance to focus on it from that perspective. And I think from that perspective, we all feel much better about it. Have a good year. Thank you.